Okay, welcome back. Here I am in the backyard. I'm using 3/16 by 1 1/2 inch steel angle iron. I'm making a new kitchen island. The one I have has outlived its usefulness. It was only one level. Now I'm making one that's going to have two levels, and I'm going to use a couple of industrial details that I've salvaged over the years. And I always use an angle grinder to cut my sides that I need. And here I'm just cutting everything to length. Inside I'll cut it more precise with my cold saw. What you see me doing here is just cutting all the rough pieces. They're the correct length, but I'm not putting the angle on them just yet. And everything gets cut outside just because it's messy. That gets the grinding dust out of the shop. And now I'm going into the weld shop. And here I am. I'm putting everything on top of my new Fireball table. And now everything needs to get a 45-degree angle. And here you can see on my cold saw, just cutting all those angles. And this is a great cold saw. KBC Tools. And I use this one jaw right here as my stopper. I cut about 4 before I realized I could do that. I just put a piece of scrap in there to kick it out, and then it was in the right spot. So this way I didn't have to stop and think. Because I used the same angle, I flipped the piece over for each opposite side. So I need to make 3 tiers. The bottom, top, and then in the middle, that would be the middle shelf. The bottom will be the bottom shelf, and the top is going to support the existing butcher block that I'm going to reuse. And here you see me welding on the Fireball table. I have it all jigged up to make this tier. Each one of these 3 tiers is 30 by 69 inches. And I'm using my MP215 Lincoln welder, MIG welder. And I tack a lot of it on camera, then off camera I really drive the welds all the way home. Just so I don't bore you, I don't really do a lot of the deep welding on camera. But just because it's flashy and sparky and it's fun to watch, I do show some of it. And now I need to go 3D. I got my 3 tiers, and now here you see me cutting the 11-inch space between. It's about 11 to 12 inches between. And just using some more of these fabrication blocks that come with the table. And I'm using them. I'm squaring up these frames from inside. I only have 2 of the blocks, and so the other side I just support with my Apple box. And then I drag the blocks to the other side and weld those in place. In the past, I would have had those legs run all the way through past the middle, but here I just put 11-inch pieces between each one of the 3 stages, and it worked out good. It was a little off square, but not enough to even notice. I would have cut the corners out, which I did when I made a sidebar in the same similar style for the leather shop. When I ran the leg up, I ran it up past everything down to the ground. But in this case, I'm not going to necessarily use legs. I'm going to use these old industrial wheels that I have. And on one side, I only have 2 of them. And then on the other side, I'm going to fabricate some feet. And here, because I'm going to use these vintage gussets that I'm going to cut on the fast cut, I don't want to use so many of them. So here I put this leg or this support bracket in the middle of the long side on the outside. So it's going to be on the same plane as the gussets you'll see in a minute. And now because I'm putting wheels and legs on it, I need to have just an extra rib inside. Now here you can see why. So I got these industrial vintage feet at the flea market, and I put one in the Evaporust when the Evaporust was fresh, and I just dropped the other one in. Now it's a few months later, and I saved it for camera. And you'll notice that the Evaporust is so used it doesn't do much, but that's my fault. Now here I'm cutting the gussets that need to get bent. I'm using my Fast Cut plasma table. That's the G8 fabrication table. And this is thin stuff. This is 16 gauge, I think. And I'm cutting I need 2, 4, 6. I need 12. I need 6 for each side. And I'm not going to put any in the middle on that center upright. And now here are my gussets, and I take them over. This is actually the next day. I put a line down the middle of each one so I have a mark. And in the past, you might have seen me use my power brake, my 3-phase bending brake. This is obviously a manual brake. This is for thinner sheet metal, so I'm able to bend this by hand. This is just a simple, I could probably go up to 10 gauge, small pieces of 10 gauge on this. And here you see these are all my pieces. Now it's time to install them. But I'm going to install them with rivets, but I do tack them in place just to keep the construction process a little bit simplified. And here I am at Tractor Supply, which here in America is just a place that sells all industrial supplies that you could use in and around the farm. And this is the box of rivets. So every time I need these rivets, I go here and grab them. I know that some blacksmith supply shops carry them online, but I always just go grab them when I need them. And here I just hold these gussets in place with a clamp, tack weld them from the other side, and I know when I burn a little bit, you can see how the weld penetrates. So I'm holding them in place with just a few tacks, and then I drill them out and I mushroom them in place. Now here I am just mentally preparing for the next step. And I went through a few different phases, and I'll show you the different phases. Here I use my induction heater to heat them up and run over and put them in place. And here I'm using a hammer to back the mush. I also have an air musher, but I don't know where it was, so I just use the hammers anyway. I need the exercise. Again, just red hot, mush it with the hammer. You always need that weight behind it, otherwise it just won't work. You obviously need something to push back on those hammer swings. And here I am just holding that in place. And here you see that big giant steel brick. It mushed a lot faster and a lot easier with that big steel brick. And then after I did a few of these, I said, why am I wrestling with this brick when I have a giant steel table in front of me? So why don't I just flip it on the side and heat it up with a torch? So again, just always trying to improve my method as I go. You go to school on the first one. And so I did one side, and then I said, oh, you know what? I'm drilling all my holes. And now here you see I have the rivets. I'm putting them up and in from underneath and then sliding it on the table and then mushing them in place on the edge of the table. Now don't anybody get upset. The table was totally safe. The table I actually did not leave a mark. It also helped that I was able to get those so red hot that they mushed fairly simply. Now here you see the industrial wheel, and I'm going to complement it with this trapezoidal shape on the other side. So how can I get my measurement? I got a piece of TIG rod here, and I'm just going to bend it in position so that I know what I need for my trapezoid. And I went to go get a pair of end cutters. So there it is. That's what I need. That's the profile of what I need. And now here I'm using 3 by 1/4. Just cutting it on the KBC cold saw. And now I got to bend them. And the easiest way to get a sharp bend, I could go over to the power brake, but it's all the way at the other shop, 3 miles away. I'm just going to give this cell a little indication of where it should bend. This will help make it a sharper bend. And then, of course, I'm going to bust out the Oxy acetylene torch, get it red hot right where I need that bend. And in some cases, I use the Rosebud, but here I wanted to concentrate the torch tip right where I needed the bend, so that's why I just use a torch tip. And there you see how it bends. I love these old wrenches, these turn of the century wrenches, these adjustables. I use them all the time for bending levers. I don't know what you would call that, a bending lever or bending wrench. They're really, really, really handy for that. So I used to buy them just to put them on the shelf. Now I buy them thinking, oh, I could bend a nice piece of steel with that. And you get a nice lot of leverage, so you could bend stuff cold too. Now here I am, I'm putting these wheels in place, just using my center punches to find location of the holes. And I'm able to locate 3 holes. It's just more than plenty. This is not going to actually be in an industrial factory. Just drilling my holes. That's 7/16. And then I bolt them up from behind. I will cut the length of the bolt flat so that when I put wood on there, ultimately the bolt heads will get buried in the wood. I'm just going to use a Forstner bit to cut some clearance for the bolt heads. Now it's time to put the feet on the opposite side. And here they are. I did take some time to grind them off camera on my Ameribrake grinder to make sure they were flat and they sat smooth on the surface there. And there I am going to town with the welder, just getting attacked from all sides. And now the majority of the construction is done, but I stepped back, and here, watch me pick it up, and I grab it and I move it around. I was like, what I need right there is a towel bar. Right there is when I thought of it. So the next step for me is to make a towel bar or a handle. And just doing a little assessment of where we're at with the industrial wheels and then the feet. And Chippy's got a lot to say. Stop it, Chippy. Stop it. And now I'm making the towel bar, and these are the brackets that are going to go on either side of the towel bar. And I got to make a sharp bend. This took me a few minutes to think this through. It was actually the next day, and I spent the evening just considering how I would make this. I start with a sharp bend, and this is 1 by 1/4. And then I have to bend it around. So I did two different techniques. Here I use the rosebud and get the whole piece hot and wrap it around this little die that I made, which is the diameter of the rod. I'm not able to bend it all the way around because my little support piece takes up the space. So now here I have to put the rod into that, get it red hot again, and then complete my bend. So here again, using the rosebud, which gives you a lot more heating surface at the same time. Putting that in there and then closing that shut and then just cinching it around with the hammer. So now I have a nice clean from a 90 degree wrapping around. Like I said, it took me the evening to come up with that. And this is just an amalgamation of all the various handles I've seen over the years. I don't think I invented this, but it's really just it's sort of the net average of all these various different bent up shaped handles that I've seen in my brain. And I want to have it split a little bit here so that they spread out the mounting bracket. And I had to rivet it first, and I give it a nice hot spot to bend on, and with my bending wrench. And there it is. And this is me making the first one, just figuring it out. And since I want a sharp bend right here on where it's going to mount, I put another little niche with the angle grinder. And I'm able to just bend those. And then I cut them to length. They're a little too long. Take them over to the bandsaw, cut them to length. And I do grind them and sand them a little bit. In fact, the next piece of metal that I used to make the other side of this towel bar, I ended up with a short piece at the top tab, so I had to adjust this one. So this is a different technique. I've already bent the 90 in it, and now I'm just using the tip, the torch tip, to just heat it up a little bit at a time. And I got a much more refined, controlled bend. When you bend all that metal at once, it sort of dimples down the middle of the bend. Here, it's bending exactly where I want it each time. There was no reason to rush it. And I still have to then bend it completely around the tube. But by adding a little bit of heat in each little spot as I went, I was able to get a much more elegant bend. The other one was a little clunky and lumpy. And by bending again a little bit at a time, I was able to get a much smoother, more controlled bend. So now I know for next time. I'm thinking I need to take it out of the forge, and that's why I was like, it's going to be too messy. It's going to be like a wet noodle. I'd rather have the heat controlled right where I need it as I need it. And that's why I use the torch. Again, just putting those rivets back in there, taking it back over and bending it. And now I have the first one to match it to. And that's why I lay it on top. Just making sure it matches. And you'll notice I don't have enough to make that top tab the same length as that one, which is fine. You'll see here this tab ended up coming out a little short. But that's okay. I just cut the other one to match that one. There was still plenty of room. And off camera, I ended up putting rivets in. I welded them in place, but off camera, I put rivets in them. So when you see it in person, you'll notice the little detail of the rivets. And that's why I like that bending wrench. You notice how I was able to put a little twist in it in the lateral direction, because as it bent up, it ended up going off center a little bit. Now here I am inspecting them after grinding them and sanding them and getting all the sharp edges off. I put it on my towel bar, which is just it's a 1 1/4. I wanted a 1 inch, but that's all they had at the store at the moment, so I got the 1 1/4. It's a little thick. But ultimately, the scale was all correct. And this little towel bar mounts below the surface, which is nice because this thing is heavy. And when you go to pick it up, you kind of stretch your arm straight, and you could tighten your spine. By stretching your spine, you're able to pick the whole thing up. And now I'm just spray painting it with a satin black, dusting it off. And my plan was to hit it with a palm sander and just highlight some of the steel here and there. But in time, that'll probably happen anyway. I didn't necessarily need to do that because dragging it into the kitchen in a few minutes, you'll see it got some scratches in it already. It got some natural scratches in it. And when I built the barn, inside of the barn, I put this planking all over the place. So I saved a ton of these scraps, and they were all just within a couple inches of being the exact length. So I had more than enough of these 1x6 rough cut planks, which have been dried now for quite some time. So they've been sitting out in the other barn for a long, long time, since the summer. And I'm just using my Total Boat Satin Gleam and my Weathermaster from Type-On to glue these in place. Now, one thing I didn't account for is how heavy this was getting. And the wood really didn't add that much weight to it, but it did make it clunky to pick up because there was no way to really grab it. With the wood in place, you couldn't wrap your hand around those bars because it had to go in the kitchen sideways, and I knew that. Now here I am with that bar. Now here we are coming into the kitchen. Rachel's very excited. Now I measured it so that it would go in sideways, but you could see Ryan helping me. We did have to take the kitchen door off because did not give myself enough leeway. So we were able to get it in sideways, so wrapping the legs and the feet around the door jamb, and we got it up in place. It was very heavy with all the stuff on it and all that steel. You could imagine it was all those steel bars at one time and all that wood at one time when you think of the collective weight of everything. And as you see the original top that was on the previous stand was basically the same parameters, but just with one shelf and legs that went to the ground. And now I took up some of the airspace underneath it, lowered the bottom shelf closer to the ground, so I have more shelf space on the two shelves. And now I'm palm sanding the old top, which is from Lumber Liquidators. It was actually the actual size how it came years ago. It's about 7 or 8 years old now. So I palm sanded it to give it a fresh look, and I ended up using Wood Honey from Total Boat, which is a food safe wood treatment. And I put that on that. Rachel's putting all the dishes and plates underneath it just to make sure we have enough room. And we obviously got twice the room, and then I did a net it. Clearing out my dad's house, I ended up with a ton of Pyrex, which was all just piled up under the original table. So now here we have enough room for all the plates and pots and all the Pyrex. And I got rid of some riffraff. And now here you see the towel rack is in place. And we have a much more organized kitchen than I had before. And I'm loving the industrial style. It goes right along with the rest of the kitchen. I'm really digging it. Thank you, Total Boat. Thank you, Lincoln Electric. Thank you, Fast Cut. Oh, remember I made those stools a few years ago? Kitty likes it. She likes the new thing. She likes it when I harass her. Kitty's about 13 years old now. Got her in the Lower East Side in the old shop, in the old New York City shop. Thanks for watching. Follow on Patreon for various clips and exclusive content. And thank you to everybody. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.